The patron spirit of Halloween knows how to bring both the thrills and the chills. It's time for Jack Skellington. Jack's got a lot of things you look for in a teammate. However, it's not always in the most direct way. He's got the health, utility, and other tools needed to have an impact, at least if you make your enemies afraid. Really, Jack is the king of status effects. Facilier may be good at dealing them out, but Jack can control them, moving them from one character to another or passing out unique gifts like Afraid. Now Afraid's a new status effect. Anyone afflicted loses 2 health if they end their movement phase adjacent to a rival. Since most characters require being next to someone to attack them, this puts several rivals on the defensive. Losing 2 health on their own turn is typically something that people want to avoid, even if it means holding off on attacking others. Kidnap the Sandy Claws, beat him with a stick, lock him up for 50 years, see what makes him tick. We may not have all that, but we do have a character card. So let's take a look at what makes Jack tick. Like most characters, Jack can move 2 spaces, provide a hand size of 2, and hit for 2 damage. His health stands at an extremely healthy 10 points, and he's worth 5 VP. Because of these numbers, this makes him one of the least tempting targets. Honestly, I put him purposely in the way of danger to take the heat off of Jack's allies. Jack brings strange gifts. You can discard a card from your hand to move a status counter from one character to the status effect of one of their allies. You can use this to change a negative status effect into a positive one, or vice versa, if they already are on the board. Davy cursed your ally? Use it to increase Sully's taunt. Aladdin sneaking behind his stealthiness? Sorry, I'd rather have your ally immobilized instead. As long as status effects are part of your match, Jack's gifts have value. We might call him Santa, but to Jack, he's Sandy Claus. On each of Jack's turns, when adding or moving a status counter to an effect, you may add an additional status counter onto it. This is the chance for free status counters. From strong to tough to magic brooms and no punchbacks, you can add free turns to a status and tip the balance of the game. Come with us and you will see this our town of Halloween. And alongside that, we'll also find Jack Skellington's cards. Let's go through Jack Skellington's cards and break it down a little further. I'll be going from most common to least common, as some cards appear in the deck multiple times. The first 3 cards each appear twice. The Pumpkin King has a fearsome throw. It has a range of 2 and inflicts 2 damage and 2 afraid to a rival. What I appreciate about this card is that if you hit someone at a distance, then they have to take 2 additional damage to get into melee range of Jack, thanks to Afraid. What's this? What's this? There's movement everywhere. Jack moves 4 spaces and then reveals the top card in the deck. If it's a status card, then draw it. Now, it's most likely that you'll simply move 4 spaces, which is still significant. But if you have the teammates with several status cards, like Facilier or Davy, then you may get another card out of it. Gauge its usefulness on Jack's need and how likely you are to draw a card. Jack is well known for his scary face. One adjacent rival gains 2 afraid, then deal 2 damage to a rival within range 2 who already has afraid. Your rival staying at a distance due to being afraid, punish them and provoke them into coming closer, all the while damaging someone else up close. This card's a decent method of impacting 2 rivals, especially if you can still move afterwards, making them hesitant to come to you due to the effects of Afraid. The rest of the cards only appear once each. Every hero needs a 0, and this one is Jack's best friend. This does 1 indirect damage to each adjacent rival. If that rival is afraid, it does 3 damage instead. It's a great way to do additional damage to opponents that are already afraid. It's also a good way to bypass taunt or stealthy. Sometimes Jack can really pile on the gifts. 1 adjacent rival gains 2 afraid, 2 flustered, and 2 immobilized. Then they take 1 damage for each status effect they have. I know what you're thinking. This is a great chance to KO someone with so much damage. But keep in mind that these status effects will likely take someone out of the fight for a round or 2. So use it to debilitate rather than to KO. Being immobilized and afraid leaves them with very few options. All the while they get cards banished thanks to being flustered. It's time to prepare the sleigh. Jack goes 3 spaces, and then until the end of his turn, whenever a rival is damaged, Jack chooses to either give them 2 afraid or 2 immobilized. Jack doesn't have many ways to damage multiple people in a turn outside of 0, but it is a great opportunity to pile on extra gifts against his opponents. Jack has a gift for you and it's pretty valuable. He can bestow 3 strong to one adjacent ally. This card should not be understated. It's a unique opportunity to strengthen one of your allies. The ways that this can be used are plentiful. If the Doctor gets it, he can do 4 or 6 damage each turn thanks to a skill and upgrade. Demona's Launcher or Lightning can do massive damage to multiple characters. It's a really good card that should be used wisely. So, are Jack's skills a trick or a treat? Jack fits a niche, but it's a valuable and a popular one. He's in it for the status effects. He loves handing them out and he loves moving them around. No one is truly safe relying on status effects if Jack is their enemy. As long as 2 teammates have a status effect on them, Jack can move them around as he sees fit. Taunt is an incredibly powerful effect that can be lengthened now. Gothel and Aladdin can have their stealthiness countered. If you happen to upgrade Jack, he can keep some status effects going for more than half the game. Afraid is a deterrent that can be offensive or defensive. It's not foolproof, but it's quite effective at reducing melee damage. If you inflict Afraid at a distance, they have to move within Afraid's range in order to do standard attack damage. Still, Jack does more than simply hand out Afraid. He has multiple ways to immobilize foes or keep them in place while your teammates go to work. Be mindful that Jack truly shines either when one side or the other makes use of special effects. So, if your opponent isn't using them, don't pair Jack with, say, Ariel and Moana. He's a really good counter pick against Sully, Stitch, Facilier, or others who rely on statuses. Jack does his best work in a support role, but man is he good at it. Jack's strengths lie in the fact that at 10 HP and 5 VP, he's got the points needed to stay up close without worrying too much about offensive threats. No status is safe when Jack is around. And Jack has a way to counteract many popular and powerful status effects such as Stealthy, Tough, and Strong. I consider these weaknesses more like trade-offs, but they do exist. While Afraid can cause damage, he doesn't do much direct damage. Afraid doesn't have the same impact when you can do damage at a distance. Without allies or opponents to use status effects, there isn't much to manipulate. Jack really wants at least one ally who relies on status effects, but typically prefers 2. Fortunately, several members of the cast do that. There are 2 specific types. There are characters that give themselves positive effects, like Stealthy, Strong, Brooms, and Tough. But there's also the ones that hand out things like Curses, Flustered, or No Punchbacks. Jack needs 2 different characters with status effects to truly shift counters. The other thing to note is that Jack has the rare ability to provide Strong, which opens things up for some allies. I know it's only 1 card, but when it's played well, it can turn one of Jack's allies into a juggernaut. He really does fit well with most of the cast. There are a lot of teams you can come up with, each with a different theme or strategy. So, when giving out these teams, I'm not assuming your opponent specializes in status effects. That way, the team works no matter who your opponent is. Just keep in mind that his effectiveness only goes up if your opponent is status heavy. Jack, Aladdin, Facilier. This team is all about making your life difficult with status effects. Flustered, Immobilized, Afraid, Shrunken, Cursed, Stealthy, oh my. Jack and Facilier support each other well when it comes to dealing out and adjusting the status effects. Your opponent won't be left with a lot of options. Between Facilier being worth 4 VP, Jack having 10 HP, and Aladdin being stealthy much of the game, it takes a lot of work for your opponent to win by KOs. The main catch with this team is that it can run through cards quickly. You may start out with 7 cards, but you have to take it slow or else all your cards will run out. Sully, Gaston, and Jack. Sully's job is to take the pressure off the others and allow Gaston to disrupt the opponent. Jack has the ability to move around status effect tokens as needed to keep Sully taunted or to keep Gaston strong. Being Afraid tends to separate the opponent, which opens them up for Gaston's strikes. At the same time, Taunt can group them together around Sully, taking damage. It's pick your poison. So that's our breakdown of Jack Skellington. Thanks for joining us. Make sure to stick around for our next breakdown. Until then, and I just can't wait till next Halloween, because I got some new ideas that'll really make him scream. See you next time.